why when a president says something like this, it's usually calculated, vetted, gone through all the national security channels before it's ripped off in an impromptu press conference. Just to put a point on your beyond the likes of what the world has ever seen line from the president when he talked about the fire and the fury and the power of the United States, he used that line in that same briefing. They were talking about the opioid crisis and border security. Here's President Trump yesterday in the same place where he delivered the fire and fury line.
It is a problem the likes of which we have not seen. I would say the likes of which this country certainly has never seen that kind of strength.
So you're seeing that same rhetoric there. Steve Kornacki, so this comes against the backdrop, David Ignatius touched on it, on a significant week with North Korea in terms of sanctions, in terms of more diplomatic moves to put pressure on the regime there. $1 billion, a third of their export economy taken away from them in those sanctions from the UN on Saturday. You have Secretary of State Rex Tillerson saying, we're not for regime change. We're not here to change a regime. We just want you to pull back from your nuclear program. And then the president comes out like this, which goes a far right turn from what they were trying to do elsewhere.
Well, it's interesting because the thing that I was trying to figure out listening to him yesterday, thinking about it afterwards, was who was the audience that was in his mind as he was delivering that? Was this a president who was thinking of the American people, how they're responding to the crisis? Was this an instinct on his to try to sound tough to the voters who elected him, to try to sound tough to the American people? Was this a president who thought he was talking to North Korea, who was trying to throw them off their game a little bit? Or I think what was interesting to listen to David say there a few minutes ago was the idea that maybe this was intended, maybe his audience in his mind was the Chinese, and that maybe in his mind there might have been some strategic purpose here of making the Chinese think, hey, we better take this whole sanctions business a little bit more seriously. I think maybe, I don't know if David is still there, but I'd be curious in terms of, is that a message that the Chinese received from this? If this was what the president was thinking it would have the effect of doing to the Chinese in their calculations, is that how they're likely to respond to it? Are they likely to take it a different way?
China and the U.S. are playing the little bit of the good cop, bad cop diplomatic round here, and China has been warning North Korea on its own, but also saying you're really going to have to get into this diplomatic round. You know, this guy's crazy. This guy's going to go after you. There is that dynamic here, and so the more the president ratchets up the rhetoric, the more he encourages China to do something to avert this catastrophe, which it would be a disaster for China, for South Korea, for Japan, for the whole region. So I think that's at play here. As we've been saying, the problem with this kind of rhetoric is you get stuck in it. Joe made the right point. You're in effect drawing a red line, and then people sometimes call you on it. And the North Koreans are very good at that. Their business is defiance. So they wait for moments like this to puncture all the threats and rhetoric from the other side with actions of their own.
And, you know, Willie, the North Koreans have played the United States quite effectively for the past 20, 25 years. And so it is going to be fascinating to see what happens here. Very frightening. But I asked a question yesterday. It was more of a rhetorical question, and I think, unfortunately, I know the answer to it. Do we really believe, does anybody at this table really believe, do people that know this president, even from a distance, really believe that he's going to be the president that allows North Korea to get nuclear weapons that can strike Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and possibly Los Angeles? Is he going to let that be written about him in the history books? And I just don't see that as a possibility. I mean, as frightening as that is, I just don't think he has the mindset to say, well, there's nothing we can do about it, so I guess we're going to have to try to figure out how to contain that nuclear threat like we've contained Pakistan's nuclear threat, like we're going to have to contain Iran's nuclear threat. And when you start thinking that way, Willie, then suddenly everything David Ignatius is saying and everything that Mika and I have been hearing off the record, that people are preparing for a war with North Korea, preparing for all the possibilities of war with North Korea from the south to the north, or defending an attack from the north to the south. Suddenly, unfortunately, it seems frighteningly real.
Yeah, I agree with you. He will not and does not want to be the president who allowed North Korea to go nuclear, to launch an attack toward the United States. The question is, how does he stop it? Does he really mean it when he talks about fire and fury? Is he willing to strike preemptively against North Korea with all those implications? And he's also the first president we've had in this, since you talked about Bill Clinton in 1994 with that agreement that North Korea effectively ignored, who can rise to the bait, who can take the bait. When North Korea puts out this absurd propaganda, when North Korea puts out this strong rhetoric about engulfing in flames and everything they've said over the last 30 years, he's the first one to respond at least as strong as he did yesterday with comments like fire and fury.
Right. You know, the problem is, though, Willie, that we've had a lot of things happening, and the history is speeding forward much more quickly than Donald Trump would have expected, than a lot of our generals would have expected. Things are happening faster out of North Korea in the development of these weapons than we would have expected. Barack Obama, again, when they were sitting talking during the break, during the transition, for those who haven't heard this yet, he sat down with Donald Trump and said, "You can worry about North Korea, about Obamacare, all you want to worry about Obamacare. Go ahead, do it. Have fun. What's going to keep you awake at night is going to be North Korea. That's what you better start focusing on now." And of course, that's proved to be, unfortunately, all too true 6 months later. But I don't even think the Obama administration or many foreign policy experts could have expected their nuclear technology, their missile technology, to move this quickly forward in 6 months.
Yeah, and Josh Green, it ties into your book a bit as you talk about the devil's bargain with Steve Bannon and Donald Trump and everyone else who's in the West Wing, influencing the way he thinks and the way the country is run. It doesn't sound like Steve Bannon, fire and fury, going after North Korea, engaging North Korea this way. Where is that mindset coming from right now?
Well, I think what you see is that right now Donald Trump is not in the West Wing. He's not surrounded by people like Steve Bannon who can help present a more balanced view of maybe how to handle North Korea. Bannon, by and large, is an isolationist, is not a guy in his cabinet who'd be pushing for this sort of thing. But as we've seen, when Trump goes to Bedminster, he pulls away from some of these advisors. He tends to react, it seems like, based on what he's seeing on television. It was at Bedminster that he decided to fire FBI Director James Comey. So he kind of gets out on his own and does his own thing without necessarily the staff support that you would want around him, especially on as volatile an issue as North Korea.
And David Ignatius, this has always been the conflict at the center of Donald Trump's foreign policy. Even during the campaign, Donald Trump would say, "We fought too many wars. We need to bring our sons home. Let everybody else worry about their regions. Let them worry. We're not going to spend money on more missiles." And at the same time, in the same speech, he would say, "We're going to destroy ISIS. We're going to run them into the ground. We're going to wipe them off the face of the earth. It's easy. We're going to do it quickly. We're going to stand up to the Iranians. We're going to tear up that nuclear deal. We're going..." You know, there's always been Trump the isolationist when he's playing for the crowds, but then there's been Trump the Jacksonian, which, I mean, the purest sense of the term, being a Jacksonian in foreign policy. We're going to go over and we're going to destroy anybody quickly that gives us any trouble, then we're going to come back home.
I think you're right, Joe. There's that tension in Trump. I think one of the things he's been consistent about is saying to U.S. allies and potential partners like China, either you step up and help more, whether it's purchasing weapons or cooperating in diplomacy, or we're going to have to take care of this. And I think that's a lot of the hidden theme here to China. You know, deal with this, or we're going to have a world of fire and fury, which is not in your interest. The other thing I'd say is, since right after the election, I have been listening to members of the incoming Trump administration talk about foreign policy issues. North Korea always was at the top of the list. This is one they have known was coming at them. They've been looking for options now for 6 months, and to be honest, they still haven't found any. That's why the generals and the CIA are being tasked so urgently to look at this, is because so far the answers keep coming back. It's a bloody mess that leaves everybody worse off.
We've only scratched the surface on this story, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, and Willie, this is something that Americans need to know, This is something that has literally been keeping them up all hours of the night for months now. It's not like any of this is a surprise. They see this coming, and they have been losing sleep over it over the past 6 months. They certainly didn't want the president to escalate things yesterday the way he did, but as David said, they've seen this train coming, and they're preparing for it, but they're just no good options.
Yeah, and they're preparing with a lot more than rhetoric, as David said as well. Still ahead on Morning Joe, ranking member of the Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Ben Cardin, joins us. Plus, former Secretary of Defense under President Clinton, a man who's experienced with this North Korean problem, William Cohen, how Clinton's warning to North Korea compares to what we heard from President Trump yesterday. And later, presidential historian Michael Beschloss joins us on what happens to be the 72nd anniversary of the atomic bombing of Nagasaki. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.